teach you how to make sourdough. A lot of people keep asking, so we're going to go through the steps. I'll write them down. You got the video. It all starts with the fridge. You have a bacteria. You need to keep it alive. And we slow down the process because it goes very fast normally when you're just at room temperature. So we slow it down. So this is our little friend here, Monty. He's been alive for a couple of years for us and a few more years before that. We figure this is over 10 years old now. And it feeds on water and flour. It's made of water and flour. You need to get your own. I don't recommend making your own. I've watched a lot of YouTube videos. Get it from somebody else. Ask me, go to a local bakery, order it online, but don't try to make it yourself unless you're really good at this. So this is about 60 grams. You've got your scale here. I've got about 60 grams of starter. And what I'm going to do is make equal parts of flour and water. So what I'm doing here on the scale is I'm going to put about 400 grams of flour on here. So I've zeroed out the bowl and I'm just watching it go until I hit about 400. If I put too much in, that's why I always start with the flour first so I can take it back out if I need to. So I've got 400 there. Then I'm going to zero it out. So equal parts water and flour by gram. So now I'm going to do 400 grams of water. I'll try to hit this one pretty accurate so I don't have to take any out. Jed's here helping us, so close enough. So now what I'm going to do is just take this and dump it in. So there's a general principle about creating starter. So this is going to be a giant bowl starter that I'm going to make about 6 loaves of bread with. And that is equal parts water and flour. And then you can add as much starter as you want to. You can put one fleck of it in, like that, or you can add a bunch. And basically, the more you have in there that matches your 1-to-1 ratio, the faster it'll make your starter. So you can add, I'm adding just a little bit, like 60 grams versus 400 grams of the other two, which means that it'll just take a little bit longer to make that starter. But we've got a wood stove, and it's very temperature sensitive. So like we had it in the fridge, it'll slow it right down so you can keep it in there for weeks. But if you have it at room temperature, it takes about, if you have 1-to-1, so 400 grams of starter, 400 grams of flour, 400 grams of water, it will take about 8 hours to make your starter bubble properly. If I have a lesser ratio, it might take a little bit longer. And then if you increase your heat, it'll shorten the time. So I'll probably have to leave this overnight, but with the wood heat in the morning, we'll have some nice bubbling action. So I've mixed this all together really good now. So this is non-processed. Bacteria is in there. And now what it's going to do is eat the water and the flour. It's going to consume them as an active bacteria, and then it'll start to bubble. And you'll start to see it move and bubble. And when it comes to like a boil where it's like actively big bubbles and popping and this bowl is almost filled, then it'll be perfect for making bread. Now we're going to come back to this, but I'm going to wash this container, keep it, and as soon as this comes to an active boil, I'm going to take some of it, mix in a little bit of water and flour, and get another 60 grams back in here, put it in the fridge so that we have it ready for the next time. So we're always going to keep our bacteria alive. So that's lesson 1, is taking your bacteria out of the fridge, adding it to equal parts water and flour, letting it set until it bubbles, and we'll show you as it starts to bubble more and more. We'll show you what that looks like so you know when it's done. Again, it's temperature sensitive. At 20 degrees with 1-to-1, it will be, thanks for the sound effects, Jenny. Adding raspberry sounds here. If it's 1-to-1, so let's say 100 grams of starter, 100 grams of flour, 100 grams of water, then it'll take about 8 hours at 20 degrees Celsius in the air. And then depending on if you have higher temperatures, it'll go faster. If you have lower temperatures, it'll go slower. So you just have to keep an eye on it. You'll get a feel for it. We'll be back. 2 hours later, and hot wood room, we've got our first couple of bubbles. So they're starting to pop now on the surface. So no rising, not a lot of action yet, but really that bacteria is taking effect and it's really going to start to bubble now. Hey people, welcome to day 2. So overnight, here's what happened. You see before it was flat and it was right at the bottom. So it's risen to above here. You can see the big bubbles forming, and you can see how it's starting to kind of rise, pop, and fall. Now it was right up to here. I didn't cover it well enough, so there was a little bit of a film or a skin on the top, and I just kind of folded it in so that you could see what it looks like normally. But there's 2 signs that you've let it go too far. One is that you get little tiny bubbles that look like soap suds. So it looks like if you have dishwater and you have the soap suds that are really, really tiny and they're kind of squirting out of holes, that means that it's very hungry and you've kind of gone past the point. Another one is that it's falling. So it rises with these big bubbles, and then as you get those little squirt ones, it starts to fall. It'll actually go back down all the way to the original level. So there's nothing really wrong with it at that point. You can just kind of like feed it new starter and bring it back, but I would probably not make bread out of it. You might make pancakes or something with that stuff, or reboot it, but this is really nice here. So the first thing we need to do before we forget is that we need to get our special Tupperware container back out, and we're going to keep this thing alive. So this is we call it our pet Monty. And so what we want to do is just zero out the scale with our Tupperware on it, and then get about 20 grams. It expands and can pop your top off because there's kind of like a gastro thing going on. So if you have it in a vacuum, it'll actually blow the top off of your container. So I don't like to put too much in there. So I'm just going for like 20 grams basically. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but you do want to get close with these things. So that's pretty good there. So now I just need a little bit of water, 20 grams of water, so 1 to 1 to 1. I've gone a little over, which happens from time to time. So I always go starter, water, and flour, and that way I can get it out if I need to. A little bit of flour. So this is really the most important. If you screw up your bread, whatever, but if you use all your starter or throw it out and you forget to do this part, then that's going to be bad. So you just mix that up real good so all the flour is folded into it. So what we've just done is we've fed the bacteria. We took a little bit and we've added water and flour, which is what it needs to eat. That 1 to 1 to 1 ratio is perfect. If we left this out on the counter in about 8 hours at 20 degrees Celsius in the room temperature, it would boil just like this. So it goes very quickly. Well, we don't want that to happen, and we don't want to keep feeding it all the time and make too much. So what we're just going to do is put the top on here, and then just find a good place in the fridge to put that in, and it can sit in there for literally months. You'll see like a little brown liquid on the top of it, which makes it look gross or whatever, but you just mix it back in, feed it, and it's good to go. So you can really keep it in there a long time. I typically try not to leave it for more than a month without feeding it, but or we're making lots of bread, so it just gets rebooted all the time. So that's that. And the next step here is we're gonna actually get some bread started. So that's a little bit different than what we did yesterday, where we were just making more starter. This is just a giant bowl of starter. And so what we just put into the fridge, that's another starter. It's just adding water and flour and making more of the bacteria and letting it grow. So now what we need to do is take a bowl. Now I'm going to give you the ratios in a link, so don't worry about that. I'm doing 3 loaves and 3 loaves. So those are the measurements I'm using. So what I'm going to do is add about 300 grams of this in there. So we've got about 300 in there now. So I'm going to zero that out. Now I'm going to add 300 grams of starter, 750 grams of water. So it's 3 cups and a bit or something like that. Pretty close. Again, these things don't need to be exact, but you are using the scale to get as close as possible. So I got about 750 grams of water. And now I'm going to add 1,170 grams of flour. So I zero that out. I'm going to throw a couple of these bowls of flour in here. Now, kind of an interesting fun fact is I did the math, and the bread, when you're buying your flour, it seems like a lot of flour you're using, but if you think about how much bread you're buying for your family, we figured this out to about 30 cents of cost of flour for a loaf of bread. So we're getting 6 loaves out of bread for this at 30 cents a loaf. So that's a lot of savings. Normally a loaf of bread is $3-4. Sourdough is certainly even more expensive. So that's a really nice savings that you're getting. So now I'm just going to do the final piece, which is 20 grams of salt. There you go. So I'm going to mix that up in a second. So I'm just going to pause here and do another one of it, and then I'll come back. So a couple of different comments here. This is what I've got left in my bowl. People get attached to the starter. I know that I certainly did at the beginning. You'll get used to this, but you can throw it out. Not a big deal. Just a little bit of flour and water. So I'm going to chuck this, but you can use what's left here. There's probably 100 grams or something left in the bowl, and just start a whole nother batch if you want to do like 2 in a row. Or you could start some up and then make pancakes out of it. If you forgot to make your fridge stuff, you can rescue this to get that going. But in this case, I'm just going to throw it out. When you are trying to wash this stuff, it can get really hard. So I just use a bottle lid here. It's round, and so it makes it really easy to scrape the bowl out. If you use cloths and stuff like that, you're going to wreck them. It's very glutinous. It almost turns into like a concrete. And so this can be really useful for just get some hot water in there and then just scrape it off with this. So that's kind of a useful tip, because the cleanup is a little bit annoying on this. Now, while I'm folding this in with my hands here, so we have 4 ingredients. We have water, flour, salt, and the starter bacteria. This is similar, other than the salt, this is similar to the bacteria process in the sense that we're going to mix this in, and then we're going to let it sit for a long period of time, because we want the bacteria to eat through all the water in the flour. And that's kind of one of the interesting things about sourdough, is that the yeast process, the rising process, is that the bacteria eats through the gluten, which I am very interested in that. I don't know a lot about it, but I feel like it's an important sort of natural way of letting bread take its course. And so that's what's going to happen, is we're going to let the bread form by letting the bacteria eat the water and the flour and the salt. And then that's going to take about 4 hours. So the first 2 hours is going to be us folding this every about 30 minutes. So what you want to do is just kind of reach in, fold it 4 or 5 times. And that's just to kind of make sure that everything is being activated, everything's touching, bacteria is getting around. So that's the first 2 hours. The second 2 hours is going to be just letting it sit and kind of expand. You might not see a lot of rise on it. You may or may not. It doesn't really matter. And so 4 hours, first 2 hours, every 30 minutes, just fold it up. The second 2 hours, just let it sit. Once you've done that, there's going to be a choice that you have to make. If you have enough time in your day, you can then ball it up, which you'll see the whole process for that, but you ball it up into your loaves and then let it sit for another 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours. It really, again, depends on the temperature of your house. So I'll show you how to tell what's happening with it and when it's ready to bake and the whole baking process and everything. But essentially you have a decision to make. You can either do it all in one day, or you can just, at the 4 hour mark, put all your stuff in the fridge, leave it overnight, and it'll slow down the process, and then bring it out and cook it when you want to, which is really great. And Katie and I use that all the time. It's probably what we're going to do today. So at the 4 hour mark, we'll put it all in one lump, put it in the fridge, and then come back to it tomorrow so that we can control when we want to cook it, when we think the oven's going to be available, and all that kind of stuff. So that's just a nice sort of practical tip for you. So you don't need to be at home all day necessarily. You could start this halfway through the day, or in the morning, or in the evening, and then just get it into your fridge. So there we go. I've got my stuff all mixed up, and I'm just going to let it sit now for half an hour. And every half an hour, I'm just going to fold it. For 2 hours, we'll do that. About 3-4 times we'll do that. And then we'll let it sit for 2 hours. One last comment before piecing out for today is that from what I understand of doing this, I'm not a real connoisseur, but we use white flour, and I find it to be very forgiving. When you look at everybody's how-tos online, they're very specific. It's like every half an hour you got to do this and this and fold it this many times, and it's like we've not always done it perfectly, and it generally tends to turn out. So I find that the white flour is very forgiving with this sourdough process. Probably other flours, real flour, like there's no nutritional value in this, I don't think. Like white flour is very refined. So if you had like real flour, like spelt or something like that, I'm imagining that you do need to be a little bit more precise, and it's a little bit more finicky. I'm going to embark on that process this year of getting real flour and taking that journey, so stick around for part 2. But for now, I'm giving you the general principles, but it is very forgiving, so don't fuss too much. Anyway, we'll see you next time. Alright, so you can see here, this one I've folded. I'm at kind of the half an hour mark here on my timer, and then this one I'm gonna fold, so just what that looks like. So you can see it's bumpy here. It was just all mixed together. So now what I'm doing, the first time it's very wet, so I'm just pulling it up and then stretching it and putting it across. So northeast, southwest, kind of 1, 2, 3, 4. We're not trying to like knead the bread or anything. We're just trying to mix it together. So like I said, 3, 4, 5 times should be good. So now I've got that done. I'm gonna give it a half an hour. I'm gonna cover it over. We don't want like the brown skin to develop on the top, so we're just gonna cover them over another half an hour. Alright, so we took the route of not doing it all in one day and putting this in the fridge. Now it's the next day. So what I'm going to do is take this out, the giant one that has 6 loaves in it. I'm going to separate them all into about 700 gram loaves apiece. We need parchment paper, we need a scale, we need something like this, like a bread scraper where you can chop it up. And I got these at the dollar store, just 6 identical bowls that we're going to shape them into as they expand out. So all I got to do now is take this out of the bowl, So there we go. Remember my tip yesterday about how much fun these are not to wash, and so you use one of these, scrape it out. So I'm going to fill that up with water and scrape that out. And I need exactly 6 of these. What these are going to be useful for is the bread won't stick to your pot. You won't have to wash out your, what's it called, babe?
Dutch oven.
Dutch oven. You have the Dutch ovens. And these are going to be really useful for airlifting the balls in and out of the Dutch ovens, which are very hot. So here we go. Now you saw a little bit of a skin that developed on mine because it wasn't covered all the way. I've come to just be like okay with that. Normally it wouldn't be okay, but when you fold it in, the bread just kind of absorbs it over time, and you don't really notice it in the finished product. So I don't lose a lot of sleep over that kind of thing. So all I'm going to do now is basically chop into this, get it on here, and try to get it real close to about 700 grams. And I find if I put them all at just about 700, then I can take any leftover and equally split it amongst the rest of them. If you don't have equal loaves, then they'll cook at different, you want to get them basically as equal as you can. So I'm just going to work away at this, so we'll do a little pause and then come back when I've got this done. So we've got our 6 equally weighted loaves. So what we're going to do now is just put them into a ball. I'm going to hide the skin, just kind of wrap it all up on the middle. So I used to really kind of freak out about this part, and I thought it was like an art and you had to like shape it and like do all this crazy stuff. I've just found that if you just kind of roll it up like when you're a kid playing with Play-Doh and you just wanted to make a quick ball, because what's going to happen basically is that as it sits out over the next couple of hours, it's going to expand from a ball, which doesn't really need to be perfect. It's going to expand out into this, and it's going to fill out and really come out of the ball. So, and that's how we're going to know when it's ready to cook. So, so we really just need to form it into somewhat of a ball, get it into here, get it into a bowl, and then let it come out into that bowl. So I'm going to do that with the rest of them now, and we'll be right back. Okay, here's my last one. Parchment paper, bowl, and now this is, at this point, we don't want any brown film. So on this last part, if you have a brown film, there's no more way to wrap it up in and let it eat. When you cook it, it'll end up having this little hat. It'll be really weird. It won't look good. So on this part, we want to definitely try to cover it up with like a bag that you get, like a soapy bag or whatever, plastic bags, and then you can just kind of bunch it up underneath. And there we go. So we're going out to get something to eat, and we're going to just put it in the wood room. This process here can really change depending on the heat of your house. When it's like even 18 degrees or 19 degrees, we've seen it take like almost 5, 6, 7 hours to expand out. We're going to show you what it looks like when it's ready to cook. And then on the shorter side, if it's really hot, I mean, it can be almost like 2 hours. So we're going to put it over there. The temperature is a lot hotter by the wood stove, and expect that maybe in 2 or 3 hours, these are going to be ready to cook. Now the danger, we have 6 of these. We can only put 2 in the oven at a time, and the Dutch ovens have to reheat in between each thing. So by the time you get to your last loaf, if you don't start the process soon enough, you can end up with ones that are overdone. So the problem, the worst situation is you do them too early. They'll end up really dense, they won't grow out, and they're not as nice to eat. If you wait too late, they'll flatten out, they'll be really flat, and they won't have this nice kind of bread shape to them that's all rounded and everything. So if you're selling them or giving them to other people, they're not going to be good. It still tastes good flat, certainly better than if it's dense and really not cooked well. So, but we really want to get it perfect and in the middle. So anyway, we'll come back and show you how to tell when it's ready to start baking them. We'll be back. All right, so just doing a quick check on the bread here. When I open this up and look at it, it is still, it's coming, but it hasn't expanded. It hasn't sort of grown and molded I call it letting go. It hasn't like let go from the ball shape and then just kind of gooed into the bowl. So it's definitely not ready yet. All right, so now it's been a few hours and you can see the ball has grown to fill the bowl, and see how it's kind of growing into all of the grooves on the parchment paper. So it's gone from its ball in the middle and it's now kind of let go into the bowl. So now we're going to take it to the colder side of the house and get it into the oven and start cooking it. So that's basically how we know it's ready, is just to have it kind of have come out of the ball and start to sink into the bowl and let go, we'll call it. So if it's still tight and still small and in the center and in a ball, it's not ready. As it starts to fill out the bowl, then and kind of get gooey, then it's ready to go. And we don't want to let it get again too far, otherwise it'll just go flat. So we'll see if this works out for us. All right, so you can see here, I've got the oven around 465. There's a thing called boldness. The boldness means basically how much do you want to burn the bread on the outside. So you can really blacken it. It doesn't really affect it much on the inside. Some people don't like it quite so bold, some people do. So you clear the temperature. We like 465, so that's what we're gonna do. Inside of here, we've got, I'll just show you quickly, we have a couple of Dutch ovens in there. We bought them on sale at the superstore for about 40 bucks a piece. They're very useful. You can use them for stews or just things on the stove, in the stove. What we're doing is to kind of double wrap the heat and make the bread expand very quickly. And there's two ways to do that. One is the Dutch oven itself, and the other thing that trick I learned from my brother was take some kind of a spray bottle and you spray the lid to create steam, trap it, and the steam plus the double wrapped oven, it makes the bread rise very, very quickly. So the first thing that we've done here is we've had it on 465 with the Dutch ovens inside for about 35 minutes. And that's because we want the Dutch ovens, we want the physical material of them to be very, very hot. The bottom of it, we want it to be very hot. And then we're gonna take the bread here, we're gonna put it, airlift it in very quickly, spray. We don't wanna lose heat, so we're gonna do it quick. We're gonna spray, get them in there, and cook it for 15 minutes inside the Dutch oven. Then we're gonna take them out. We're gonna put the bread sort of naked on the rack for another 15 minutes. And we're gonna put a shield, we're gonna take the lid off and shield it so that we don't burn the bottom, basically, because it's such a high heat. And so then when we've done it for 15 minutes and then 15 minutes out, it'll be cooked, it'll be nice and golden, and then it'll be done. After that, we have to reheat the Dutch ovens for another 15 minutes, and then we can do the next batch. So if you have a bigger oven, obviously it's going to be easier. This is what we've got, so we can do 2 at a time, and we have this sort of 45-minute cycle that we have to do. So here we go.
Should take the lid off first. I'm usually the baker.
That'll be fine.
I take the lid off first, put it beside.
That's the airlifting process. You can see the bread is really filled out, really let go. So now I've got that nice and hot. The last step here is just to get some of that moisture in there. There we go. Try to put it in the back so it gets the most amount of heat. Then we'll get the timer on. 15 minutes. We're gonna go back to watching our documentary about life off the grid, and we'll be back to take these out and do the next part. All right, 15 minutes has gone off, so we're just gonna take these out real quick. So now what we're gonna do is take the two tops and use them as shields. So I'm just gonna put them on the bottom rack. Then we need to carefully take these out. Still moving pretty quick. They're looking nice already. And like that. These are very hot. You don't want to burn yourself. You can see how this parchment paper again acts as a nice little transportation pad. Those are going to be pretty much perfect, I think. So now we're just going to add 15 minutes. And in 15 minutes, those things should be golden brown. And we'll rest them on these. You don't want to put them straight on the ground because the bottom will not get the breathing space that it needs. It'll make the bottom go all soft and weird. So we're going to put it here and let it rest for a while. And so we'll see you in another 15 minutes. All right, this is the moment you've all been waiting for. All that hard work. Only 30 cents a loaf, but there's a lot of love that goes into it. And usually love costs time, so put the time in. This is the product you end up with.
To wait to hear it start cracking.
So these will be nice and hard here at first, and then as you let it set for like a couple of hours, let it cool down, it'll get a little bit softer. Really recommend cooling it down. Oh, if you like Rice Krispies, there's the old Snap Crackle Pop. So the bread starts to make that sound. It's kind of fun as it settles. So what we do is let them cool down all the way. You certainly want to make sure that you don't put them in a Ziploc bag or something too early and close it because the moisture will make it mold faster. So just the last few comments, we're going to let it cool. We're going to put it in Ziploc. We're probably just going to eat a couple of them just straight up right now. And then some of them we'll use, for the next couple of days. The first 2 days, they're amazing. It's just like the best thing you've ever eaten. Then on day 3 and 4, they start to tire a little bit. Anything past 4 or 5 days, they're going to start molding. There's no preservatives in this. It's bread, as you know, if you've made homemade bread. So you really want to consume it as quickly as you can, or put it in the Ziploc bags and put it in the freezer. So if you put it in the freezer, it's obviously not going to have that great, amazing, fresh taste, but when you put it into the toaster, it really does bring it back to life. There's French toast, there's toast, you can make prosciutto, there's all kinds of different things you can do with it, but I'll show you here. This is a loaf that we put into the freezer, we've taken it out, and it's ready to make toast and French toast out of for Jaylyn and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, you've seen the whole process now. We've still got our starter in here that we're ready to take out and use again whenever we need to. And I hope you guys get to make some bread and enjoy it like we do. We've been doing this for a couple of years now. So, oh, one last thing. For Christmas, the year that we started making sourdough bread, it just so happened that my mother purchased this nice little turkey knife for us. So what we do is, it can be really challenging to cut the bread, especially when it's fresh and really, really soft. And so what we do is, this is a great little tip here, so it's not frustrating, is you can just take it and cut it in half. You can see that, so fresh, steaming. The air pockets here indicate that the bacteria got in, did its work, expanded. So you have those nice bubbles in there. And then once you've got it cut in half, this is very difficult to cut if you just have like a regular bread knife.
Or when it's that hot.
You can see there with the turkey knife, you can just cut right through it.
Yeah, that's
Woo!
a butter knife.
Just need a little bit of fresh butter here.
There's probably some in the butter dish. That's soft.
That's a lot of butter.
And we have our taste tester here.
That's
Evan,
too much
you let
butter.
us know how it tastes.
That's too much butter. Oh man.
Heavenly.
We gotta get the pots back in the oven.
We gotta keep working here. We got more loaves to do, but anyway, this stuff's amazing. Hope you enjoyed it, and good luck.